Hi, my name is Danielle, and I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about my family dynamics. As far as how things were in the past, I have a brother that's 2 years younger than me, and growing up we weren't like super close, I would say. I mean, because he's a male and I'm a female, but I would say we got along relatively well. I mean, for the most part. We never were, like, I would say, argumentative like siblings or got into like major fights or anything. I would say everything was pretty smooth. I think we became a little closer, I would say, when we both went to college. He went off to college, and I think just as we became because I think that whole the age gap kind of closed a bit, so we became a little closer, and we, had a little bit better relationship. As far as we go out to diners and we just do little things like more as a brother and sister, whereas when we were growing up, we really didn't do that too much unless we were really young and doing things with my father. But, as teenagers, we were kind of just like doing our own thing, but we always respected each other, I have to say. There was definitely mutual respect. It's just that we were just on different pages is all. Like age, again, male, female, 2 years apart, just, kind of not like two girls and stuff, so. So that's basically how things happen. And I've always had we always would, even when he was off to college, I was off to college, or I was like out of college, we would talk a decent amount on the phone. One thing I did notice though, my brother, I have to say, like prior to a difference, I think my brother went to like an Ivy League school. And I think that went to his head a little bit, to be quite honest with you. Because when he was in high school, I think it was like more down to earth and stuff. And then when he kind of went away to college a bit, maybe the people that he associated with were more just like, I even noticed when he came home from school, he was a little kind of more precise in how he talked. It was very like more intellectual. It was like, whoa, where's this coming from? So maybe, I don't know, I noticed a bit of a difference, and I think his head got a little bit bigger, to be honest with you, but they were still close. And as far as, I would say, the relationship between him and my mother was always very close. My mother would like his confidant, and I think things would go wrong as a relationship or school. He was like a worrywart, like a perfectionist, because he went to was very smart and went to very good schools and stuff. So, I would say he was very close to my mom. He probably called my mother every day, but a lot of it was him. I think a lot of it just became, as he got older, this wasn't always the case when he was like a kid or an adolescent, but when he got like kind of college age and a little bit and afterwards, it became like just a lot about him, like a lot about his needs, a lot about, he's stressed about work, he's stressed about this, there's problems with this girlfriend, there's problems with that. So it just became a little bit, more like that. That it became, I felt like more like one-sided, but my mother was always like a very nurturing type of person, and my brother's like very repetitive, and he could like repeat himself a gazillion times about the same subject, but my mother was always one that would just keep listening to that. So, even though he would repeat the same thing like day after day, my mom was, she's always an excellent listener, and she figured she was very, good as a parent, meaning like, how many times you want to get it out is good. My father was a lot different. My father was in the sense that he would listen, but he'd be like, hey, you already told me this story. How many times are you going to tell me? So he knew that he could tell my father like maybe one time, but he wanted to tell somebody a million times. So that's where kind of like, he'd only have my dad is like that. He used to be a lot more patient. Now he's pretty impatient, but they used to, he would make it pretty clear to him, like, hey, okay, you told me this story, and then you get a little aggravated, like, yeah, you keep telling it to me. So I would say definitely the relationship between my mother and my brother was always a lot stronger than the relationship between my brother and my father. They were always a lot closer, and I always felt like that from the beginning. So yeah, that's, in my opinion, I feel like the separation was, I say, a lot to do with his wife, who he met at grad school. He met his wife at grad school. The first time I met her, I just felt she was a little, just kind of like a little full of herself. I mean, that was my opinion. He had dated this other really nice, more soft-spoken woman prior to this, But this one, I don't know. She was very like opinionated. It's like she didn't want to listen to anybody else's opinion. Everything that she said was correct, and this and that. So I didn't really care for her, to be quite honest. I thought she was, and I felt like she had like a control over my brother, which I felt like this was. And my family really didn't like really 100% care for her. It was just kind of like she was very self-centered. It was kind of like she was technically quote unquote kosher. So my parents were, every time that she came to the house, my father and my mother went out of their way to separate, give her like a chicken cutlet without the cheese. They would always do that, or they'd buy over the Thanksgiving, they'd buy like a kosher turkey, things like that, and like, but then she'd go out to a restaurant and be a complete hypocrite, and she'd eat like non-kosher stuff. So like, and after a while, like, she would start bringing her own food, because I guess it just became like, well, I guess she figured out they were getting a little annoyed and stuff, so she started bringing her own food every time she came over. So it was kind of odd, and and then I think that when I saw the biggest changes is when they had their first child, Justin, who at the time when I last seen him, he was 4. I last saw Justin when he was 4, and that was the first child, and they were just like very overprotective, especially her. It was just kind of like, oh, it's like, I don't know who that, I think that doctor, like Dr. Oz, not Dr. Oz, Dr. Oz, but there was some type of doctor, it was some type of like a child psychiatrist or a psychologist that she would like go by the rules of this doctor, and this one says this, and she wouldn't listen to anybody else's opinion or anything like that. And at the same time, it was very odd, like she would like kind of let the kid was in control. She just let the kid do whatever he wants. The kid would just like, he'd come over, he'd be at the table, and he was so skinny, and they would just give him some random food, but he would just like run around, and like he had no like, they just kind of had this thing of like, as far as like, they controlled him, but they were at the same time, they were just kind of like, oh, just let him just kind of go off and do his thing, and like, who cares, like, if he's not eating properly, because he never did eat properly. He'd eat little bits and pieces and run off. And my mother, father would make comment like, hey, like, why don't you sit him down at the table and, let him eat or make him eat? Because that's how we grew up. It's like, no, you have to eat. It's kind of like there was more discipline in that sense. I think she got very offended by that. I think also, kind of brainwashed. Like he got a little bit offended by that. And I think, especially with my father would get really impatient. It's like, just let him, damn it. He'd be like, just let him sit down and eat. What's going on here? He's not eating anything and this and that. So that's where an issue came in. That's when I first noticed it is, with her, yeah, but more so when the first child was born. And then a little bit less. They had a second child, but I didn't know her as well. She was only 2 at the time. I think the most interaction I had was with him. He was 4 and she was just kind of much younger. So I think more the disarray came more so, or what caused the problems were more so the parenting of Justin. I'll say, yeah, that's his name. So it's been, there was basically a major rift between my father and my brother maybe about, I would say 5 to 6 years ago. It was just more about like him being just very insulted, like about how come you never bring the kids over? And it was like, but my father at the same time, I understand my brother's point of view because he was always like more very old-fashioned Italian. He's like, well, you should always bring the kids to see us. Like, why should we have to come see you? And, it's like that. And I think that, but I understand like his point of view, but I also do understand my brother's point of view on that aspect. So a lot of it was, my dad refused to go to the house, and he'd get really annoyed when he'd have to drive because I lived in Manhattan and my parents lived about maybe an hour away. So he got a bit annoyed, and so there became like even more and more of a rift and this and that. And my dad would just say like, just, like kind of be yelling at my brother and stuff. My brother would be yelling at my dad, and then it'd just be like a real mess of family dynamics. But I would say like the whole cause of everything was kind of like the rift between my brother and my father, because my father just had a very different way of thinking about stuff. Just kind of like, well, my brother would say, well, it's like we work too and this and that. We can't always come to you. And my brother would be like, my father would be like, well, it's like, it's been 3 weeks. It's been 4 weeks. It's been this. It's been how many weeks? And it's like, and my brother would just get so mad and get like fed up. It would just get to the point where they would just start arguing like cats and dogs. It was horrible. It was just, just bad, And my mother was just kind of a little bit more neutral about it, but my father was just very adamant, like, oh, it's been like, my dad's like a very much of a guilt tripper in a way though. He even to this day with me, oh, I haven't seen you in like X amount of weeks and this and that. But it was kind of like, he didn't, I guess, I could see both sides of this part of it, but he was just more like, but he got nasty, and then my brother got nasty back, and it just got really, really ugly. That's what I would say. And so I think what made it really, really, so my brother got to the point, he's like, that's it, we're not coming over anymore. I'm tired of this, that's it. We're not bringing Justin and Ariana over anymore. And that was his kind of decision. So my father then, was like very upset. So he actually, I think this is what just killed it. It's just what my father, which I don't think was 100% right, but then I can understand his feeling too, that he wanted to look into legally having grandparental rights. And, and then once they found out about that, or they felt like so, I could understand his point of view, but at the same time, yeah, I understand my brothers, but I also understand, like, how could you, we're not bringing the kids over anymore, like, how can you just kind of deprive the grandparents of, any rights to see their grandchildren? And it was like, my brother had this, notion that's like, well, if we're having problems, then the problems are going to be with the kids, too. It's like, well, I have a problem with you, but so, therefore, it's going to he dragged the kids into it. So basically, I think the grandparental right thing just enraged my brother and enraged his wife, and really, I remember my brother calling me one day, and he just going, and I don't remember my brother really going into rages, but he had gone into a rage saying oh, my wife is up all night looking into this whole legal stuff and what her rights are, what our rights are, and this and that, and she's up all night and she's driving my children to school in the morning with no sleep. And he was livid. He was so livid about that whole situation, And, next thing I knew, it's just I wasn't really involved in it. I'd heard that part, but next thing, it was just oh, that's it. It's my brother stopped calling my mother, stopped calling me, stopped calling my father. Well, he never really called my father, but he just stopped. That's it. That's when the whole, he just stopped calling. They just cut off all connection with the family, and it was just all of us. It was kind of wasn't saying well, we're not talking to you anymore. It's just all of a sudden, it was just everything was just gone. And I tried calling my brother so many times, and and my mother tried to see what was going on with my brother. He wouldn't return any of the phone calls. He wouldn't return my phone calls, and basically. He just made a decision, or I don't know if it was him or his wife, or both of them made a decision that they wouldn't have any contact with anybody in the entire family. And I don't mean just him with my dad. I mean him with my mom, him with me, him with at that time, I think how old was my grandmother at the time? In her 90s. And he was 95, I guess, or 94. And she did nothing to him. And with the whole family, it was just kind of a whole disconnect from the family. He decided that he just cut himself all off from the whole family. And again, to this day, it hurt me bad in a sense, because, we had we weren't again super close, but I think we had a decent relationship, and I never did anything directly to him or did anything directly to his children. So the whole riff again was more between him and my father, but the whole family got dragged into it. It was just kind of well, that riff just made a decision that that's it. I'm cutting off we're cutting off everything, not just us, me and my wife, but also my 2 children are going to be cut off from the entire family. And that's basically what happened. And it was kind of sudden. And my mother tried to make a bunch of phone calls. Over the years, I've tried to make phone calls to try to connect. a lot of times I get her intercepting, and it's like, oh, she'll say like, oh, he's not here, he's not here. Half the times I really don't believe it. I think he is, or maybe, or he's away on business. And I said, I really want to just kind of, I had nothing to do with this. I really want to mend this. And then, because I was hurt by it, because he's my only sibling. And it started like after time, and I think I was slightly more neutral about it. My father probably at that point was like, whatever. But my mother, I think, is the one who really got the brunt of it. She felt really, bad. I mean, my mother has a history, in general, I would say, like, has a history of depression and anxiety, and also has a history of chronic degenerative disc disease, like back pain and that. So she's, this is like one of the things in her life that was really important. So basically, and I see, my father, I see the indifference over the past 5 years, whatever, really, really exacerbated and really was horrible for her in every single way. So, like, even though, like, I was coming to the terms that, like, I was trying everything in my power, like, I was almost angry, but I was, like, kind of, I didn't really know the entire story at the same time, so, but I saw the pain that it was causing my mother, like, she suffered just so much from this. I mean, I don't have children, so, these are only, like, grandchildren, and all of a sudden she's not having any relationship with her grandchildren, or her son was very, very alarming. And a lot of the phone calls that I would make, I think at a certain point I just kind of gave up, but then I kept keep trying and trying and trying over the years, just to try to, because I saw the pain that my mother felt was so strong, and I just felt like she was just, and to this day, I have to say, she's scarred over this whole situation, I'm like, she's scarred, and like, I even see, like, she almost like she just wants to, she has pictures all around the house of my brother and the way, and the kids, and it's very, very sad when you go into the house, because she says she just wants to remember how it was, and it's very, very sad. You go around, you see pictures of, like, Justin, who's 4, Ariana, who's 2, and that's even pictures of my brother and stuff, and because that's what she wants to remember, because that's all she knows, and now it's like she doesn't want to, like, ever let go of those, at least what she had, because now she has nothing as far as that's concerned. She doesn't have any rights, or she's not seeing her grandchildren, she's not seeing her son, and and that's how maybe she keeps the memories alive, is to keep, or whatever she had positive going, the positive thoughts that she keeps alive. She has these memorabilia around the house, like lots of pictures still of the kids when they were that age. And she refuses to take them down. My father's just like, well, what is it? But he's come to terms with, like, that's her way of remembering whatever was used to exist. And for me, I've just become, people ask me, do you have any siblings? I said, no, I don't, because I don't want to get into it, because it's still somewhat painful for me. So I said, no, I'm an only child. And that's very sad to say, because then you have to start explaining the whole situation. Oh, I have a brother. Oh, yeah, where does he live? So, I don't want to, it's kind of, then it starts opening and, like, putting salt on a wound, and I just don't want to go there. So I just basically said, no, I'm an only child. But even to this day, it's kind of even after all these years, my mom still talks about my brother. Oh, you remember when he did this? Remember he did that? And Brett did this. That's my brother's name. And Brett would have done this or like that. And I never, like, cut her off and just, like, say, like, oh, he doesn't exist anymore. It's like she still, like, talks about him and stuff, and talks about the kids, and it's just kind of like, I guess, memories, like, whatever she had in the past, she just, so long ago, and she doesn't want to at least let that part go. So whatever was good, she still holds on to so dearly. But I can see it just really profoundly to this day affects my mother. And again, my aunt passed away about 3 years ago of lung cancer. I tried to contact my brother and let him know about that. And again, there was no rift between my grandma, my aunt, and my brother in any way. They didn't have any falling out. But, it was kind of like he never responded back about the passing of my aunt, and she eventually did pass of lung cancer about 3 years ago. But I never heard back. I said, well, the funeral, I'm saying the funeral is going to be on this day, or she's passing of lung cancer. Never heard back. My grandmother at the time when they had the rift was probably about I guess 93 at the time. And there was never really a rift there either. So, as time, my grandmother was getting older and, living with my parents and stuff, because my mother did not want to put her in one of those nursing homes. That was her decision. And so basically, eventually she wound up, God bless, at 98, she wound up passing away. I tried to, again, inform him about his grandmother, passing away, and nothing, still nothing. All the phone calls, the emails, or however way I knew how to contact him, nothing. So it was just kind of like he just completely just decided to just cut himself off from everybody and the whole family. And I think it's hard for it's also very, very hard when holidays come up, like Thanksgiving or like Christmas, or, because I come from a mixed family background where my mother is Jewish, my dad is Catholic, so we celebrate all the holidays, and now just everything's missing. It's like, like I remember my brother and the kids coming to the house, and we'd buy them all gifts and stuff, and the kids would be all excited, and it was just, really, really sweet to watch. And I saw the big look on my mom's face and the look on my face when they opened up the gifts, and it's very, very sweet. And that's just completely missing from the house. I think it's gotten to the point, like, honestly, in the last couple of years, my parents haven't even put up a Christmas tree. That's how bad that's how sad it's gotten. Because, like, my mom's like, she doesn't want to see a tree, or my dad's like, oh, what's the point of this? It's like, we don't have there's no grandchildren, there's no nothing. It's kind of like, so it became like a happy holiday, at least when the kids were younger. We'd buy them like all these, like, nice little like toys and clothes and all that kind of stuff. And that's completely gone from the family, so that's missing. My parents, my father doesn't have that, my mother doesn't have that. I don't have little children to share that with, my niece and my nephew. So it's just become it's just very sad. Like, the holidays are just sad, I have to say, in the family. So, how does it affect my communication skills with other people? It's just like when you think you know somebody, you don't. It's like somebody that you're close to, even a family member. It's just like, it's supposed to be, this is your blood here. And then they can just be so quick to just like kind of brush you off there, just like that. So how does it affect me? It's just like, all I can say is like, yeah, it affects my trust issues in a bit. Because it's like, in the back of my mind, like when you know somebody real, when you're close to somebody that close, when you know somebody that well, you just never know. That's all I can say. You never know what can happen. Somebody could just, even somebody blood like that, or somebody that you were close to, can just brush you off like that. So I guess it has affected me in a little bit, as far as just keeping that always in the back of my mind. Not that things like that have really happened recently, but just knowing, really being cognizant and being aware that something like that can happen. Even with family, with blood, it can happen just like that. Just when something you never expect, that somebody would be able to do that. It can happen. So in that aspect, that's how it's affected me, and it's made me just aware that don't think it can't happen. Don't think it can't happen, because it can, even with your own family. You figure the relationships, they normally, people get mad at each other, people have rifts, but then they come back together. And this has been so odd how it, that like nothing, just kind of, so it can happen. That's all I can say. So what I can suggest to anybody that's going through something similar, and something I would consider this as a very traumatic experience, and it's just somebody in the family completely just cutting themselves off from everybody else in the family. I was pretty strong about it, but not, everybody, we all kind of handle things differently. I did my best to try to bring the family back together, and there was nothing I could do, but I would say do your best to try to at least try. Do your best, do like your diligence as far as to get the family back together, but sometimes it may not happen, and in my case, it was a lost cause, and I made a lot of efforts, and it didn't. But my thing is just, if you're going through something like this, just think of the positive times that you had. It's like, if you can ever regain or never regain a relationship, it's like, think of the nice times that you had, and just try to like really, really, really hold on to that very dearly, and those really beautiful moments that you had with that person and those people. And just try to really kind of focus on that, rather than being like well, you know, I mean, it is what it is. So, I mean, rather than being like really traumatic, and I mean, it's traumatic, but being negative, like try to look at the positive side of it, that you did have years with them, or you did have like a relationship at one point. I did have a good relationship with my brother, so I hold very dear, you know, those positive moments that we had, and also the moments that I had with my niece and my nephew. You know, that we had some really fun times and cute times, and I hold them just very dear to me, and that's how I kind of cope with it. So if my brother ever popped back up into or he came crying back or popped up into the house again, how would I handle that? I mean, I'd give him a really hard lesson, really like a lot of words. You know, this wouldn't be so easy. Oh, yo, welcome back. It's like, where have you been for 5 years? Oh, we're just going to take you back. I mean, but after he get like a really hard, like a really very strong lecture and a lot of like, give him a lot of grief, you know, I mean, he still is my brother. And again, I don't know how much this is my brother really, or how much it is his wife that really made him like this, or I really can't say, you know, because it's like, I could never imagine my brother doing something like that. So like part of me is then always like, we're all like blaming his wife, let's say, for doing this, for causing this to happen. So, you know, or maybe it's just like he was mentally unstable. I don't know. Maybe he was going through some type of mental problem. I really don't know. So again, I'm not to say that I would not ever accept him back into my life and stuff. I mean, but he would definitely, you know, get a really pretty big bad lecture, I mean, about everything that went down. But at the end, I'm a forgiving person, and like I would just, after a lot of working through, and I would probably even say like, hey, this is serious. You're not just going to come back in. We're going to go to a counselor. We're going to go talk this all out, because what happened here was very traumatic for the family. We're going to see. Well, my name is Danielle again. Thank you very much for listening into my story about my family dynamics and the issues between my brother and the family. It's hard for me to talk about this, but you know, it's like I hope in some way that this maybe inspired or helped somebody who's going through something similar and how to deal with things, and maybe that feel like you're not alone. That, you know, it's like sometimes no matter how hard you try and how you can't fix it, but always know that you're not alone, and that, you know, that as long as you make the effort to try to do something like that. And in the end, if it doesn't, and my thing is like, hopefully I've inspired to somebody just to kind of hold on to the memories that they've had with that person or those people. And, you know, I think that's a good thing.